morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Ogbanje Joseph. So today we are going to be looking at public policy analysis, but we'll be demystifying, the concept, and we're starting with policy. We're starting with policy. Now, when you hear the term policy, what readily comes to your mind? Okay, now policy, you know, can be looked at from different dimensions, it can be looked at from different perspectives. Okay, but first and foremost, I would like us to know that policy is a choice. Okay, policy is a choice. Now, it is an important choice or a critical, you know, or important decision taken by individuals, groups, or organizations. Therefore, there has to be several policy alternatives, and policy formation, okay, involves, you know, and of course, and policy formation involves, the development of several policy alternatives and choices, available. Okay, so that is actually policy. So policy can be looked at as a choice. Okay, policy also can be seen as a proposed course of action or projected set of decisions. Now, policies are prospective or are statements of future actions. Now, policy states what is going to be done or will be done. It outlines a course of contemplated or desired action in relation to certain desired objects or events in the real world. So now, policy is goal oriented. It is directed at the attainment of certain ends, okay, that are stated, and of course, objective, behind it. Now, a policy has certain purposes or intentions. Now, policy has also, policy has to also do with particular problems, or problem areas. They are not abstract, but rather they relate to and are actual responses to the challenges and pressures arising from an environment. So, furthermore, policies are designed and targeted at dissolving existing or future problems or satisfying certain needs. So now, policy is a cause certain action. Okay, now it provides the direction, the guide, and the way, to the achievement of certain goals. Now, policy provides the framework within which present and future actions are taken. So it is a major guideline for action. Okay, so that is all of that I talked about. They are actually what is known as policy. Okay, but one thing we must realize very quickly is that policy can actually be conceptualized. Policy can be conceptualized. So what are the ways in which we can actually conceptualize policy? Number one, policy is an expression of general purpose or desired state of affairs. So the state of policy in this context expresses the broad purposes or ends of governmental activity in one field, and also describes the state of affairs which would prevail on the achievement of those purposes. So it is an expression of general purpose or desired state of affairs. So that is number one. So number two, policy can be, seen as specific proposals. Specific proposals. What are specific proposals? Now, specific proposal in this context, okay, is that we see statements of specific actions which political organizations, interest groups, political parties, the cabinet itself would like to see undertaken by the government. Okay, so that is, the second concept, or how to conceptualize policy. The third is policy as decision of government or decision of private organization. Now, most times, political scientists tend to focus on case study of government decisions. They make, they may take a larger view of policy making, looking for broader patterns of related decisions and taking into cognizance the longer time span, which should certainly extend to what happens after the moment of choice, and to ask questions of implementation and actual outcomes. Okay, so however, policy is larger than decision because it usually involves a series of what of crucial, a series of more specific decisions. While one decision in a sequence may be seen as crucial, an understanding of a larger policy requires some study of decisions, both preceding and following, the so-called crucial episode. Okay. Now, the next one is policy as a formal authorization. When it is said of a government or non-governmental organization that it has a policy on a particular topic, the reference is sometimes to the specific act of parliament or statutory instrument which permits or requires an activity to take place. Or it may be said that when legislation is enacted, that the policy is to be carried out or implemented. Okay, that is the next one. The next one is policy as a program. Most Americans, students refer to policy as programs. Now, a program is defined as relating to specific sphere of government activity involving a particular package of legislation, organization, and resources. Now, for example, policy, government policy can be said to consist of a number of programs, such as the provision of subsidized council houses, a housing improvement program, an option mortgage program, and so on. Now, programs are usually seen as being the means by which governments pursue, their broader purpose or ends. Another way in which you can conceptualize policy is that policy is an output. Here, policy is seen as an output because because it actually stresses what government actually delivers as opposed to what it has promised or has authorized through legislation. Now, such an output can take many forms: the delivery of goods or services, the enforcement of rules, or the collection of taxes. The form of outputs varies between policy areas. Now, it is sometimes difficult to decide what the final output of government policy is in a particular area. For example, the health service. Now, in the health service, there is a tendency to describe such terms as more funds, more trained staff, and more beds as the output, of a policy intended to improve the quality of medical health care. Now, in fact, these are necessary but not sufficient conditions of improved medical care. They should be regarded as important contributory factors, to the desired output, but not the output itself. They could perhaps be described as intermediate outputs rather than the final or ultimate output. Outputs in practice may not conform to the state intentions. Okay, so that is policy as an output. Now, what is policy? The next one is policy as a theory or model. That is the next conceptualization. Theory as, policy as a theory or model. What does that mean? It means that all policies involve assumptions about what government can do and what the consequences of their actions will be. These assumptions are rarely spelled out, but policies nevertheless do imply a theory or model of cause and effect. At its simplest explanation, this type of theory takes the form of X, then Y will follow. Therefore, we can see that failure of a policy can arise when either from either from the government's failure to do X in full, or because X fails to have the consequences expected according to the theory. Now, policy can be regarded as a model. One of the tasks of the policy analyst is to try to tease out the theories, underlying policies, and examine the internal consistency of the resulting model and the apparent validity of its assumption. So the next conceptualization is policy as a process. Policy as a process. Now, what does that mean? It means that policy involves a process over a much longer period of time. It could begin from the statement of an objective, moment of decision or approval, implementation, and evaluation. Now, developing this process approach to the study of public policy would enable us to understand the contributions which might be made by policy analysis. Okay, so I have actually looked at policy, and we have conceptualized the various ways in which policy can actually be looked at. Okay, so what is important is that we should know that policy is a blueprint, it's an action plan, is a process, is a goal. It is actually what one or government wants to achieve per time. Thank you very much.